There have been 7 different Spider-Man films and 3 different Spider-Man actors in the time span of my life so far. If you browse Spider-Man Twitter or Reddit for at least 5 seconds, your chances of finding one of these original memes is
inevitable.
The intense debate about which live-action portrayal is better often leaves me with this sour taste in my mouth because the conversation itself fails to truly grasp what Spider-Man is and what he represents. If you have a story with a flawless narrative, perfect dialogue, and beautiful acting that fails to capture what Spider-Man represents, it's still a bad movie. Silence of the Lambs is one of the best psychological horror films of all times, and for good reason. It is absolutely remarkable in every aspect of filmmaking. But if the production company replaced the name Hannibal Lecter with Spider-Man, the entire concept immediately falls apart. That is how much weight that compound word carries. Conversely, if you have a story that has a plain narrative, mediocre dialogue, and only decent acting that perfectly encapsulates the spirit and symbolism of Spider-Man, it's still a masterpiece. I'm not saying any of these movies have anything that I just mentioned. What I'm saying is that the word Spider-Man carries an extreme amount of weight. Creating a good Spider-Man movie is more than creating just a good movie. Judging a portrayal by conventional standards when it comes to Peter Parker is probably pretty pointless, because there is really nothing conventional about him. Spider-Man is more than a character in a comic series or film franchise. He is a symbol for the ambition, passion, and determination of all the good-hearted weirdos in America. Everyone in New York City in all 3 of these franchises are Spider-Man. The people on the train that rush to help the unconscious Peter Parker are all Spider-Man. The brave little boy that stands up against Rhino is Spider-Man. Even when Peter is stripped of his superpowers or iconic red and blue costume, he is still Spider-Man. Spider-Man is in the heart, not the suit or the superpowers. Moreover, despite the fact that Peter Parker isn't a perfect person, he has to make sacrifices to do the right thing, and faces seemingly impossible odds head-on, ever determined to persevere. When I see a powerless Tobey Maguire rescue a little girl from a burning building, or Andrew Garfield swinging through the skyline of New York City with this breathtaking cinematography, or even a desperate Tom Holland running through his high school's blue-tinted hallways like a Joji music video, I still feel like Spider-Man. The dash in the word Spider-Man never represented the distinction between spider and man to me. It has always represented the connection. Yeah, all 3 of these portrayals are pretty cheesy and have overwhelming flaws, but so does Peter Parker. No movie is conventionally perfect, and there will be some misses with every hit. And this doesn't only apply to Spider-Man. The Star Wars prequels have recently seen a staggering burst of appreciation because they are meaningful to the audience that grew up with them, even when they were initially lambasted for cheesy dialogue and bloated political plots. And yeah, there are some pretty unrealistic and wacky moments in these movies, but this is a universe where a spider monster beats up bad guys while making pop culture references. Spider-Man himself is pretty wacky. I mean, this kid trying to steal his best friend's blood, or this goo monster turning people into emo jazz dancers, are probably the most Spider-Man plotlines I think I've ever heard of. The Amazing Spider-Man 2, Spider-Man 3, and Far From Home are examples of films from each franchise that I see bullied on the internet. But if you don't get that tingly nostalgia-like feeling when you watch these movies, I just think you're doing something wrong. I've recently rewatched every single live-action Spider-Man film, and all of them made me feel like Spider-Man. So if I were to answer the question in the title, it would probably look like this. I don't see Spider-Man as several different distinct, separate individuals with the same name, but rather one incredibly meaningful symbol. When I watch these movies, I don't see Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield, or Tom Holland. I just see Spider-Man. And these 7 films all become instant masterpieces when you look at them as one whole instead of several small pieces.